Hey, it's Natalie, and welcome back to Primary Focus, the Parent's Guide to Elementary School. This video is inspired by my course, Preparing Your Child for Kindergarten, which starts June 12th. I've wrapped all the things that, as a kindergarten teacher, I wish I could tell parents before school starts. Over 5 weeks, we'll dive into important social-emotional skills, expectations for you as a parent, math skills, reading and writing skills that will give your child an advantage when they start kindergarten. The best part is, since I've teamed up with Johns Hopkins University to host this course, it is at the lowest pricing it will ever be. This class is $100 for 5 weeks, which means it's only $20 a session. Think about the investment you'll make in your child's education. This is the beta class, and again, the lowest price I'll ever be able to offer. I hope to see you in class. So let's dive in to talk about 5 common mistakes parents make before they send their child to kindergarten. This is part 1, social emotional learning. Part 2 will be covering academic mistakes that parents make, and it will come out in a few days. Make sure to hit subscribe and notify so you can be one of the first to watch it. I want to pause here to let you know I'm not making this video to scare you. I'm doing it to support you. I know that so many of you are super involved in trying to make the best decisions to prepare your child for a wonderful academic career. But there's a lot of information out there to take in, and oftentimes I feel like teachers don't get to be a part of that conversation. So these are things that come off of my wish list and other kindergarten teachers' wish lists that we so desperately wish we could communicate to parents of 3, 4, and 5-year-olds before they go to kindergarten. When we think about social emotional skills, I think sharing and good manners come to mind first, but social emotional learning is so much more than that. These little steps that your child is taking now will culminate and add up to your child starting an independent life where you feel confident that they can make smart choices for themselves. It takes a long time to learn these things, and the more we can pack these lessons in when they're young and less likely to remember the hard lessons that they have to learn, the more advantage that they'll be at in the long run. When your child steps into kindergarten, they will be practicing these skills hard every single day. They'll have training wheels on, of course, but the more we can give children these experiences, the easier time they'll have adjusting to school. Let's dive in with number 1, independently managing materials. When your child is living at home, they have constant support from the adults and sometimes even siblings. When they're thrown into the kindergarten environment, teacher is not going to sit there and make sure that you remembered every last thing. The teacher will give your child lots of reminders and practice and things in place to help ensure that they do remember their things, but ultimately, if your child forgets their coat, it's going to stay at the school overnight. And the coat is just the beginning of it. Your child will be asked to manage their backpack, their lunchbox, their desk, their PE shoes, library books. Teachers are going to come in hard talking about responsibility. When your child forgets their daily folder, they're not going to call you and ask you why you didn't put it in the backpack. We're going to say to your child, that's not your mom's job. That's your job. It's your folder. They're going to learn a lot of lessons like that. It's tough love from teachers, but it's because we know your child is going to have to remember their stuff for the rest of their life. So if we can kind of put the pressure on, teach them, put rules in place in school, it will make their life easier in the long run. Something that you can do now with your child is start having them manage their materials. Maybe they have a little backpack that they're taking to and from daycare, or you know that they have an activity every week where they have materials. Start putting them in charge of it. Have them carry the things into the car. When they come home, have them empty their lunchbox right next to you. A lot of these things that as adults we do automatically in the background while your child relaxes or does something else, start getting them in charge of getting these things done. Listen, I know some of that is a pain because your child is never going to be as efficient as you are, but if you can build some of this responsibility in, they'll start to realize it. A lot of kids might not even understand what it takes to pack a backpack or the materials that they actually bring to karate with them. If you can get them in the loop with how you're managing their materials, it will give them a huge advantage, and it will start to build that little thing in their brain that says, hey, I forgot my coat. But managing materials is a little bit more than just carrying a backpack. It's also being able to use materials. So a lot of children, they get a lunchbox, they open it up, and they don't know how to open a Ziploc bag, or they're struggling to get the straw into their juice. Now we know kindergartners have little hands, they're still developing muscle. There'll always be somebody there to really help them if the Capri Sun is being difficult. If you can practice and let them start trying to open packages, it will make a big difference. For example, those little bags of chips and Cheez-Its are tough to open, but the cafeteria monitor might be looking at 150 kids in the cafeteria at once. Your child might have to sit there for 25 minutes and not get it open till the last minute. The more that they can open and independently support themselves, the better lunchtime experience they'll have. Okay, Number 2, going out in public. In today's world of convenience, it feels like we can pull into just about any parking lot and have somebody bring the groceries out to us, which I love. I'm a huge fan of this model, but this also means kids are going in public less and less. And yes, I know it is a lot easier to run errands and be out in public when you don't have your children with you, but we are starting to see kids that rarely go in public or in places that aren't kid-friendly. If you feel like your child is only bouncing between your house, family's houses, daycares, and other kid-friendly places where they can be themselves, it's time to start getting them into public a little bit. When your child goes into school, they're going to be responsible to go into public-style bathrooms by themselves and handle their business. A lot of kids really struggle with this learning curve and accidentally end up getting humiliating memories. If you start to ask people you know that have weird bathroom habits or anxiety around going to the bathroom, a lot of these are core memories that come from kindergarten and first grade. So the more that we can get kids used to kind of this public bathroom experience, the better and more comfortable they will feel with it. Also, going to public, things to consider are just kind of understanding noise levels and how loud you can be at home versus when you're walking through the aisles of a store. Understanding that you can look at things and enjoy how they look but not touch them. Just a lot of little instances of self-control. We act very different when we are out in public versus when we are in our homes. Even things like taking their shoes off. A lot of kids seemed really uncomfortable keeping their shoes on for long periods of time in the classroom. As much as we'd all love to have our shoes off here, well, half of you guys can't put your shoes back on independently, so we gotta keep our shoes on. In the course, I'll get into some more of the behaviors that kindergarten teachers are wishing that your child may have and how to teach your child certain things so that they learn these hard lessons and don't feel embarrassed in the process. Number 3 is probably the most important to me, and that is learning from other adults. A lot of times when children come to kindergarten, they've only interacted with their own family. They've had very limited exposure to other teachers. Even if they did go to like a daycare environment or something like that, they probably got really connected with one specific teacher, and now they're transitioning to taking directions from adults all day long. Not just their kindergarten teacher, but any random teacher in the hallway that corrects how they're acting, special area classes like music and art and physical education. You can set your child up for success by getting them around other adults and taking directions from other adults. Now, you don't have to send your child to preschool to do this. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. You'll have to kind of think through your budget and the amount of time that you have. But if you can get them into extracurricular classes, if you can get them hanging out and having play dates at other people's houses where you are not there, story time at the library, free classes at the science center, just anything where your child is interacting with another adult, looking for direction at them, and able to take feedback. I found when I was teaching that some of the children that were the most sensitive just weren't used to taking cues from people outside their family. Getting directions from your mom or dad is always going to feel different than getting directions from a complete stranger. And your child needs to understand how to process this and understand different tones of voice, right? Mommy might say it with a whisper and a kiss, but some adults might just be like, hey, I need you to sit down. To a child, that can feel like yelling. It can feel like they've been yelled at and they're in trouble, when that's actually not what happened at all. So the more that they have exposures around other adults, the more they can get used to different styles of interaction and just taking cues from other people. Number 4 ties right back to number 3, and this is communicating their feelings and needs. Now, I have to say, I love that this generation of parenting right now is really emphasizing communicating and sharing needs. But something that you should really observe is, can your child handle their own and communicate their needs to people that aren't their parents? It was not uncommon for me to find out that I had students sit and pee their pants because they were so afraid to ask me to go to the bathroom. I had a bathroom in the classroom. I had sign language set up that they could ask me without actually having to use their words to ask me, but they were still so afraid. They would rather soil their pants and sit in it all day and wait until their parents discovered it home, then just take the risk and ask me if they could go. We want to avoid your child humiliating themselves or putting themselves in a situation where they feel so uncomfortable that they can't communicate the most basic of needs. On that note though, I do want to say, you haven't been to kindergarten if you haven't wet your pants. Your child will wet their pants at least once in kindergarten, and it is totally okay. It's also commonplace for kindergarten teachers to ask you to put extra clothes in the backpack, anticipating that this will happen. Now, if it's happening constantly on a weekly basis, that is something to look into. But if it happens once or twice over the course of the year, they have not regressed. It just means that they're learning how to do some time management. Anyway, circling back, in the course, we'll get into some great sentences that you can teach your child and role playing that you can do with them to prepare them for common scenarios once they're in school. And if things are going wrong or you feel like your child is struggling with this, I'll share how to communicate this to problem solve with their teacher so that you can team up to help your child. And wrapping up number 4 here about communicating, it is more than communicating with with adults, it's also classmates. Many young children will spend all of their time with the same peers, whether this is siblings, cousins, or the same small group in a daycare class that they're going to. Make sure that your child has had chances to interact with new friends recently. In kindergarten, we often spent time discussing the difference between home play and school play. A lot of kids play very, very rough at home. School play, it's just very different. It's gentler, it's more polite, there are more manners and rules involved with this. And number 5, I hope will be very, very easy for you, and that is independent playtime and time to be bored. There is a lot of independent time in kindergarten, whether they're working independently, they're just at recess and nobody wanted to play with them, but they're interested in doing this specific thing. Independent time can leave a child feeling rejected or bored if they are expecting others to entertain them. So check in with how much independent time your child is getting. You want to know that if there's nothing to do right now, they can kind of figure out something to do. If we're waiting for a couple minutes, that sometimes life is boring and we do just have to wait for a couple minutes for our turn. One little thing that can happen is that kids are too much in adults' business and feel like bored time or downtime is an excuse to start really interacting with the adults. They'll sit there and try to chit chat with the teacher instead of with the kids. In the South, we call this, among other things, acting grown. There's a time and place to chit chat with the teacher and get to know them better, but it's going to be a lot less than the time they get with you at home. We see this a lot with children that are only children, or they're growing up in a single parent household where the parent and child ends up having a lot more time to interact than maybe children coming from a larger family, or where there's a second adult in the household and the child is used to seeing the adults talking with each other, but they're not invited to the conversation. It's hard to change that dynamic, and I'm not asking you to change that dynamic if that's what you have, but it's good to know it may come up. So getting your child time to play with more kids, or helping understand boundaries of downtime that you're having where you're not going to be interacting with them, can ease this interaction and heartbreak in school. So those are my 5 mistakes. I will elaborate a lot more on these in class and give you all sorts of tips and advice to help your child prepare to put their best foot forward in kindergarten. It's the best $100 you'll spend this year. I've intentionally created this class to lift you up and not tire you out. You'll get simple activities and things that you can do immediately to support your child. Class starts June 12th and it runs for 5 weeks. You can either attend live or watch the replay after the fact. Click the link in the description to learn more, and when you're ready to enroll, make sure to hit checkout as guest to get that $100 deal. If you have any questions about the course, make sure to leave a comment below. Let me know what you're wondering, or if you've got advice for other parents starting kindergarten, we would love to hear it. Make sure to keep an eye out for part 2, where we talk about 5 academic mistakes parents make before their kids start kindergarten. And I've got plenty more videos for you to help your child learn to read, problem solve with the teacher, and just get to know me more. Thanks for watching Primary Focus. My name's Natalie. I'll see you next time.